Brilliant. Well, welcome everyone to this FIBEP webinar today, co-hosted with Ruepoint and Medianet. My name is Raina Lazarova. I'm the co-founder and COO of Ruepoint. We are a global media intelligence company helping organizations demonstrate the value of communications and make data-driven business decisions. And with me here today on this webinar, I have my dear friend Amrita Sidhu, who is the Managing Director of Medianet, based in Australia, and I will let her introduce herself and her company.
Thank you so much, Raina. Pleasure to be on this webinar with you, as always, and pleasure to be talking to everyone today. So as Raina said, I am the Managing Director of Medianet. We are an Australian and New Zealand-based media intelligence organisation, and really our whole goal, our purpose of being is to help our clients, companies, brands connect with their end audiences through the achievement of earned media, and then understanding, how that all plays into their larger communications and PR strategy. And excited to be talking to everyone today about this topic, which I think for both of us is quite dear to our hearts.
It definitely is. And before we deep dive into the discussion, I just wanted to say special thanks to you, Amrita. I know it's 9 p.m. where you are, so we all really appreciate you taking the time of your evening to talk to us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to, but I promise to everyone, if you see me having a sip here, it's just water. There's nothing stronger. There probably should be, knowing me, but it's just water today, I promise.
You probably have more meetings coming during the night.
Yeah, there might be some of that happening at night. Yes. Yes.
Exactly. Well, look, so both Ruepoint and Medianet are FIBEP members. We're both thrilled to be hosting this webinar today. It's important to say that both Amrita and I obviously have worked in the media intelligence industry for a number of years, but also, as most of you, we are data and data visualization users on a daily basis, as we all are. And I guess one of the arguments we are going to make today is that everyone today in business or other environments is a data user and a data visualization user of some shape or form or another. And so understanding what makes an effective data visualization and having that data literacy is one of the important skills that all of us, maybe followed by AI, something that will become increasingly important, is one of the important skills that we in business and other areas of life should have. The topic of this webinar is how to take your data visuals from finger painting to fine art. And what we've tried to cover here is based on our experience. And if we go to the kind of agenda slide, we've listed the key areas. But in a nutshell, we want to talk about the basics. We want to cover the foundations of what makes a good visualization and what is not such a good data visualization. We've seen examples of both probably in our day-to-day life. And we want to give you examples from our business practice, as well as examples from beyond the industry. So what do others outside of media intelligence do? And there are some amazing examples that probably take an awful lot of time and effort to deliver, but they're inspirational, and I think they give us ideas around how we should build our storytelling through data. And so moving into the topic and why this is an important area for us. We feel through our work in media intelligence that a lot of the data skills required to interpret, but also build and design data visualizations are becoming a critical skill for all of us. Data literacy is something that we all, in addition to computer literacy, need to harness and understand and be good at. And so we all have a lot we can learn from each other. And we want to share our experience with you and our learning over the years during this webinar. We also think that if data visuals are done properly and in a way that takes into account the audience and the objectives, which are all basic principles we are going to talk about, they can enable stakeholders to draw quick critical insights and base decisions on the data. And so if we take as an example a big spreadsheet with multiple digits and multiple data points, for example, imagine a profit and loss account or a balance sheet. If you open that spreadsheet in front of business users, it will be very difficult for everyone to really draw any conclusions on that data. And so that is just a simple example that illustrates why an appropriate data visualization can explain a point and tell a story and draw the attention to very easy conclusions and very critical, quick insights that would be otherwise very difficult to draw with a click of a button. So that's why it's really important that we all are capable of building those visuals and be able to, at a different level, at least a certain level, to utilize the apps and the tools available to us. And I think last but not least, a very important aspect of it is, and I don't know what you think about this, Amrita, but definitely the speed at which you can access insights is something that's really important for us. And for us in media monitoring and evaluation as well, thinking about our users on the other side, being able to interpret results quickly and make those conclusions really quickly is an essential part of the value that data visualizations bring.
Absolutely. And look, let's pick up on your example of opening a big P&L spreadsheet. Okay, so that's not media data, but it's the kind of data that you and I would look at all the time. And we look at a lot of other data, sales data, operational data, business data, marketing data, day in, day out. I think you and I both, in our role. So let's go to that P&L example that you gave. So we open up a spreadsheet, something as simple a visualization as a traffic light system against those lines off the P&L are going to help business decision makers quickly, to your points here, take critical insights from the data. They're going to know which are the revenue and cost lines that are performing well versus those which then, to your point about speed, need immediate action and or need some kind of an explanation. And even to someone who's not familiar with financial statements or financial documents, them opening a P&L, everyone understands the basic concept of a traffic light system. And green means something is good, red means something not so good, and amber might be something in the middle. And it will help a person quickly interpret that data and get insights as well. So, I think this lens of data visualization, and why you and I think feel so importantly about it is, yes, it's something that we deal with day in, day out, in simple ways that you wouldn't think of, for example, like a profit and loss situation.
Without a doubt, and even an even simpler example with the bar chart, where the height of the bars gives you an indication of the performance of whatever the indicator is, just purely on a cognitive science level. Everyone understands that dynamic. Something is bigger or higher or more prominent than something else.
Absolutely, yes.
But look, and moving on, I guess, how many times have we all been shown a presentation or maybe delivered a presentation to a client, maybe a media measurement report to a client or a colleague, and we've heard the feedback, I'm not sure this looks good. And as frustrating as this sounds, one of the most important things or takeaways from this presentation we want to emphasize is it's obviously aesthetics matter, but meaning and content is equally important. And so we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that, what makes an effective presentation and an effective data visualization are principles that we can all probably do with having a better understanding and appreciation of, even in terms of being able to give feedback to all those people who send us presentations on a daily basis that we want improving, rather than saying, well, I'm not sure this looks good. That's not the feedback that anyone wants to hear, regardless of what area of business or life. So a few principles that we've put together here on this slide, and I've borrowed them from Andy Codgreave, who is one of the co-authors of a really good book that I recommend called The Big Book of Dashboards. And they summarize some key principles or some key levers that we all push and pull when we design a data visualization. So the first one would be the question around the objective. Is the objective to provide a large amount of detail and a large amount of data points and digits, or is the objective to provide the gist of the information that we have already digested? We've already, drawn that information, and we want to only give some key highlights and some key numbers. So as an example, a sales performance dashboard, for example, that gives you an awful lot of data points around sales performance is something that you would give to your business development team. And the business development team would like to track these on a weekly, monthly basis, and they need the granularity and all the data points. That's something that they are using on their own time, as opposed to, for example, if you contrast that with a presentation, a sales presentation you give to your board of directors, during which you want to present some highlights, and you have 2 seconds literally to present that information. And all you want to do is show them a bar chart with how your revenue is moving compared to where the sales targets are. And so these 2 different use cases show the dynamic between and the decision between, are you showing something that is very digested, very short in format, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of space, you don't have a lot of attention span of your users or your audience, and do you actually want to give the ability to drill down and give the ability to study and explore the data? The second basic principle is the purpose of the presentation, or the purpose of the data visual around seriousness and fun. So are you trying to purely inform decisions and provide knowledge, or are you also trying to entertain? Is there a fun element of it? And I think humor obviously plays into our hands. So my advice here will be, if there is an opportunity to be humorous whilst you're delivering, that always opens up the kind of minds of the people listening within certain boundaries, of course, depending on the audience. The third principle that is worth mentioning, and it kind of relates to the first one as well, but is more around the kind of depth and breadth of the data that you provide, is, do you actually want to give the opportunity to your users, to your audience, to explore the data after you've delivered the presentation? You want to give it to them to explore further in their own time? Or do you actually want to only explain a fact or a conclusion that you have drawn? So one is, there's no predefined decisions or conclusions. You give them the opportunity to explore. The other one is, this is the PowerPoint, it's probably static in format, and this is the conclusion that I want to explain. And so, again, if we look at some of the examples, probably from our own experience in the media intelligence sector, a lot of the times when we present to customers a media performance report or media measurement report during an interactive session, we will probably be looking to distill the facts and only explain what we've already discovered, rather than open up a big interactive dashboard and start clicking through on that dashboard. And we will come back when we speak about dashboards in a bit more detail, because they are a very important format for us in communications. And we'll talk a little bit more about the decision between static and interactive. There's a lot to be said for and against. There's, again, something that will come up again. There's no one size fits all here, but definitely think about the depth of the information, the level and the granularity of the data. And if you want to enable users to explore, or do you want to just present to them the facts that you have already discovered? And I'd say last but not least, and look, sometimes this happens deliberately, other times it happens accidentally. Presenting the data in your visual needs to be a non-honest act. It needs, rather than done in a deceptive way. We've probably all seen presentations or charts, explaining financial performance, for example, whereby you can see growth in revenue and it's kind of going up, and then you look at the EBIT chart and it's kind of going up even better, even steeper. But if you look at the scale, you can see that the scale of the 2 charts is slightly different. And what's even worse is if you've seen examples where there is a double, there's a second Y axis, and that kind of gives you a completely different scale to the scale on the other side. Whilst obviously with revenue profit, you have different numbers and scales you're working with, you need to be very careful not to deceive, even if it's accidentally, the audience. And the problem with that, obviously, is once that's come out, that kind of creates questions around your whole presentation and what you're trying to explain. People start asking themselves, oh, is there something else we need to be probably watching out for? So honesty definitely comes first, and watch out for those just accidental mistakes that sometimes happen. And so I think in terms of effectiveness, I don't know, Amrita, from your perspective, is there anything that probably jumps out from experience, or anything that you would add to what makes an effective presentation?
I think for me, it's really the storytelling part of it. And I think that's probably something that I know in the next little section of this presentation, I want to explore. We are going to talk about formats for self-exploration of data versus this, more appropriate that is storytelling when you're presenting something. I think by and large, in the business world, in the B2B world, media intelligence world, invariably we're presenting static visualizations. And so to be able to tell an effective story around it, I think is very important. So I might actually move on to that part of it. And I'll just go here to this section where I really wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about storytelling and finding your data's story. And look, I really believe that there is a very nice story arc that should be crafted around data, because data and visualizations, from my perspective, it's just another story to tell. And I love this quote here from Brené Brown, where she says, maybe stories are just data with soul. And I don't know, that really speaks to me on a lot of levels. And for anyone that's done any reading or research around storytelling, story arcs, the 6 stages of a story, the effective stories, the most effective story arcs are ones that guide the reader, the viewer of the data, through the change in the value, through the change of all the important points in the journey, what's happening with the data, in a way that strengthens the viewer of that data's, understanding, and in a way that the data is making an impact to them and is driving an outcome. Now, there's an extra layer to this, in my opinion, because we can have as strong data visualizations as you like, and there's lots of tools out there that will help you do it. But for me, and for what we do day in, day out in our roles, I really feel that human element, it remains very, very vital to help tell and sell, as I like to call it, the story of the data, visualized or not, right? Because there's a lot of data storytelling you can do, even if you don't have a great visual, and that's just guiding the audience of that data through that story arc, through the important points. And I think, again, reflecting back on the P&L example, sitting down with someone in your financial team who is running you through the areas and giving you variance commentary and telling you things you need to look out for, and then you agreeing what the impact of that is and a set of outcomes, that is actually a very effective story arc. Not like, here's just a traffic light system, off you go. That's going to help me somewhat, but someone sitting down and discussing that with me, I think, will add an extra layer of insights and actionable insights too. So the type of visualization, from my perspective, it needs to be guided by the type of story or the type of information that you're seeking to convey, and then really the outcome you're looking for from that story. Are you trying to persuade a decision maker to do something or to support something, or are you simply wanting to educate someone, share some knowledge, and have them perhaps draw their own conclusions? And, I included a quote here because this is another one that I absolutely love, that it is one of the most powerful mechanisms for telling a story. So, Raina, I'll see your opinion on this. You can probably tell it's something that I feel quite strongly about, not just even visualization for visualization's sake, but for it to actually inform, empower, and have a story arc to it. What do you think about this?
something that always fascinates me in our day-to-day work is the art of embedding a narrative in what we are trying to present or deliver, and thinking about the user and how they interact and how their brain works is always a good starting point. The principle that I try to follow is think about the story or the narrative you're building almost in the format of a comic book. The way a comic book is built, you start from the left, you build to the right, and then you, obviously, if you are in this part of the world at least, and then you kind of go on the second row and then you continue, is a good way to probably assume a lot of the users will be reading. So building your story around that sort of line, you have a line or a row of data visuals, and then you go down and you continue. And I think about also the structure of a comic, what it kind of, tries to create as a format. There's a situation, there's development, and then there's a conclusion of some sort. And so your data visual or presentation needs to follow the same structure. There needs to be a conclusion at the end, or a resolution, or a point that you are trying to make. And that usually helps me with the structure, because it can be very overwhelming if you have a big media measurement report delivering on a number of different metrics within communication. You can easily get lost, and if you as the person or the team working on the visual and on the analysis get lost, then most definitely your audience will get lost as well. And
absolutely.
so more data is not always better.
I couldn't agree more. And I think there's a real opportunity here to offer to the audience of the data, the audience of the story, to see insights they haven't seen or experienced, or wouldn't be able to decipher just looking at lines of numbers or lines of text. And I actually had this anecdote yesterday. I was speaking to someone quite senior in the pharmaceutical industry, and they were in a meeting where there were two that were more insights and analytic driven, and worked in that part of the business. And one was the business user, a senior sales and marketing person. And they were in a room trying to work out how to visualize a piece of data. And all three of them came from a different perspective. Very interesting to see how the business user, who was the sales and marketing executive, thought to visualize the data compared to one of the insights team. And I think that was, just wanted to share that with everyone. And I'll tell you maybe later what the end outcome was, because I think it's quite good, related to one of the final points you'll be making, Raina, but about who won that particular argument about which way the data was visualized. But I think that's really it. Like in that situation, the end audience was that business user, and it needed to be in a way that made sense for him.
For sure.
Great. You talked about dashboards as an important form of storytelling and visualization. You talked a little bit there about laying it out like a comic book, and a lot of dashboards do have component parts. So I'd love to hear your kind of knowledge share for our audience on the topic of dashboards.
Absolutely. Dashboards are a very common format for us in our industry. And so we've chosen to speak about them specifically as a kind of type, a very important type and format that we all deal with on a daily basis. The dashboard is a collection of data visuals, of charts that aim to answer a specific set of questions. That's typically the definition that we have. And there's an objective and there's a purpose. And there's also an audience that you're trying to communicate with. And so by far the most important question to begin with when designing a dashboard or deciding on how to build it or what to put in it is to ask the question what your audience actually wants to see, as well as how are they going to use it. So it's not a new question. Every time we think about the people we try to communicate an idea with, if you think about the purpose of communication and what we as an industry try and do, it's deliver a message at the right time, the right place to the right audience. And so delivering that information in a visual format is not different from that. Typically, a best practice is to start by talking to your user or having a discussion with your customer. That's not always possible in our world, but when it is, we encourage our consultants to always have that conversation, understand the knowledge of the user about the tool we are going to use and their previous experience with the type of dashboard or visual that we are going to use, to make sure that all the users in the team, not only the person we are speaking with, are going to be able to understand and use the tool or the report that we're providing. So try and understand what they know, what they don't know, what they want, and build a prototype of your presentation, of your report based on that knowledge, and then iterate from there. I think dashboards usually are works in progress. It's not something that you turn around and is delivered and it has a static format and form. It evolves over time, and it is the reason why it evolves is because the users evolve or change on the other side. So always keep an eye on those long-term relationships and customers who have been your customers for years and years, because it's very easy to fall into the trap that it's the same thing you're delivering year after year, but the users are changing on the other side. People come from different organizations with different expectations, maybe higher, maybe they need a bit of support and hand-holding, but asking that question is definitely a best practice. In terms
Could
of
I add something?
Sure.
I'm so sorry, Raina. Could I add something to that?
Yeah.
So one of the tips that we do, which I thought would be valuable to share here as well, is that we sit down probably every second quarterly business review or that we do with our customers, and we talk to them about the format of the dashboards, and we give them the opportunity. We ask them, about whether we need to adjust the dashboards, whether we need to redesign them, whether there's, not just from a visual UI layer, but from the layout, what is the story the data is telling, what are the types of data points we're visualizing. We give them an opportunity to, the word we use is redesign, to redesign their dashboards as well. Now, I'm sure that's something that maybe a number of the people that are watching this as well would also do, but I've always found that a really good best practice to engage in that consultative, collaborative way with your media intelligence clients.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And that is a really good practice. Sometimes customers are asking for, but as a business practice, something that you offer sounds like a really good idea.
Thank you.
Coming back to what are the key principles, quick key questions you want to answer before you embark on that task of creating a dashboard. Definitely a big one for us is interactive or static, depending on the audience, the time that you will have to deliver it, and what are you aiming to achieve. Are they going to explore the data, or are they going to they're just after the insights? They want someone to deliver those insights to them. And so in terms of creating an interactive dashboard, there are a number of industry standard tools that are probably worth mentioning here. I'm sure you've used some or all of them, but the ones that are standard for our industry are definitely, in no particular order, Microsoft Power BI, Google Looker Studio, without a doubt. We have Click, Tableau. Maybe these are four of the key that we come across. It's interesting because sometimes, as in business, you need to decide. As a measurement company, as an intelligence business, you typically have a preference towards one, two, or the other. So we at Ruepoint are a Microsoft user. And so for us, Power BI is the go-to tool when it comes to how we would like to deliver those reports. But for us, the starting question is always with the client, do you already use a different tool set internally? And so if we come across a customer who are a big Google user, clearly they're not going to be particularly pleased with using a Microsoft tool in terms of how they can interact with it and what access they have to the actual application, not just a published version of it. So in general, for us in our industry, because we deal with so much data and we work with different customers with their own environments, we need to be able to cover all of those different applications, and we need to be able to use all of them and deliver all of them. Of course, we have a preference. I know, Amrita, you are big Google users, your organization. I think in Europe in general, probably fair to say Microsoft is stronger in the B2B world. But, either way, the skill set that we all need to have should cover more than one application for sure.
Absolutely. And you are right. We are big Google users, Google's workspace users. But the majority of our clients, especially because they're larger enterprises, they use Microsoft as well. So we have to make sure our visualizations, our reporting is fit for the format that they want to absorb the content in. So we don't, while we have our own visualization platform as well, we don't necessarily force that onto a particular client if they have a different preference. That's, means it's more shareable, more usable, more valuable, and tells a better story in their organization.
Exactly, especially if you are aiming to promote the integration of other data into that dashboard, in addition to the kind of more media-centric data that you would usually own as a media intelligence company. If you go down the route of providing more outcome-based or impact-based data, you need to be able to give the user the ability to input the data. There's sometimes privacy restrictions, so being able to even host it in their environment based on your work is also a consideration to bear in mind. Also, in terms of interactive dashboards, an important principle that we sometimes tend to forget, or I certainly tend to forget, is eye tracking studies have shown that people don't read interactive dashboards well. There's too much on them. Users don't use the filters, as an example. And maybe if we look at the next slide, I've provided a quick screenshot of an interactive dashboard. We're not going to go click on it or go into the interactive version. This is built in Power BI, but you can see how many data points there are. There is usually a row, a nav bar with filters at the top, which is what we have here. Studies show that the general user doesn't register this. This is too much for them. And whilst Amrita and I might think that this is beautiful and look at, you can click through and see what technology companies are doing around the world, this might not be the experience of the user. And the level of, I guess, data literacy, expertise, even computer literacy that you expect on the other side is an interesting aspect of to consider. Definitely don't take it for granted that this is something that everyone can use or consume or understand. The last point I wanted to make about the key principles and decisions you need to make with a dashboard is the form of delivery. And again, that goes back to what our audience or where and how our audience is going to consume this data. Are they going to look at it on a desktop, on a big screen in the office or at home, or are they more likely to consume it on an iPad or a mobile device? And also equally, if we think about the static versus interactive, are they more likely as users to consume emails than they are to consume something on a third-party app on their mobile device? No matter what we want to believe, a lot of, certainly in our industry, in the PR world, email is still used largely for exchange of information and data. And so being able to convey and embed, if you want, some data visuals in some of your key deliverables that you send to your customers in the form of, coverage emails or media reviews, digests, media reports, it needs to take into account that kind of restriction. And typically customers are good at telling you, look, my board of directors look at nothing other than email. So don't make the effort to create a big interactive dashboard for them. But also, interestingly, something that we come across a lot as well, and be interesting to hear your experience, Amrita, is the need to be able to deliver more than one format. Because we create data insights and we create products for multiple stakeholders within the organization, we don't sell necessarily only to the PR and communications team. There are many stakeholders within the organization that would receive a subset of what we already deliver. And so, normally we would need to create multiple different deliveries and forms of delivery depending on those different users. And I think whilst there's always pressure on everyone in terms of running a profitable business, I think it's becoming more and more accepted that the form, it's something that comes as part of the service. You can have 5 different forms or, subset of the same. It really is the same product as far as the client is concerned, although the value you deliver obviously expands, beyond just delivering value to the communications team. But that's why what we do becomes increasingly important, that understanding. And I think, for us as those data experts and media intelligence experts, we should take pride in the fact that what we deliver is being used beyond the communications team. I should be very cognizant of that need, because that's how our services are becoming more valuable and are being used across the board. And that, at the end of the day, brings the PR team to the board table, something that we all have an interest in. So, think about those different stakeholders and audiences is something that I'd probably say is an important aspect. And I'll finish here with dashboards and let Amrita, give us some great examples from other industries. A lot of those interactive business intelligence tools that we mentioned previously, Power BI, Tableau, Click, all of those tools typically give you the ability to design a mobile layout. So you design for desktop, but in addition to that, you can design, so the same link you publish, if it is opened on a mobile device, you do need to spend the time to design, to lay it out separately using the visuals you've already created. But that's a really nice feature that, I personally really like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would really encourage everyone out of, all of these formats, really the last 2 combined, that email and mobile. Email is such a core part of so many of the deliverables that we do and we provide, on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis. So I think that's absolutely vital. But we all know it from our own behavior as consumers of data and consumers of email on our mobile. We all know it from sitting next to the person on the bus, on the commute in, or, however you might get in to the office, and how easy it is to quickly look at something in this short attention span and swipe right, or is it left, whichever way does the delete, the delete or the archive. And I think so, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that increasingly the data visualizations we're producing are being consumed via email format and are being consumed on on mobile as well. So definitely some, a really, to me, that's a very, very important pillar of media intelligence dashboards as well.
Absolutely,
yeah. But yes, to maybe give our audience a little bit of inspiration from beyond the industry, I'm going to run you through a few examples that I really feel, are quite innovative, and they're quite captivating with the way the data visualizations are done. Now, studies show that us humans, we are predominantly visual creatures. A visual is processed 60,000 times faster than any text. And, complementary studies show that 90% of the information transferred to the brain is visual. And another data point, which isn't included on this slide, is that 65% of the population comprises of visual learners rather than written learners, right? So I think that they're absolutely undeniable, the power of a really great visual. So from my perspective, it's super important to, be able to see, understand data trends, outliers, patterns in an easily digestible and intuitive way. And I'm going to run you through 3 very different examples. None of them cross, I think, anything remotely to do with the media intelligence industry. And hopefully, it sparks just a little bit of inspiration before we wrap up with, I guess, some of our key pillars and our key takeaways. So the first one I want to run you through is something called Selfie City. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not, but as a woman who likes to take a good selfie, Raina, I think you would agree, you and I probably have enough selfies together in the couple of times a year that we have the privilege to see each other. I do like taking a good selfie. Sadly, my selfies didn't make the cut here for whatever reason, must speak to Selfie City, but they analyzed 120,000 selfies from around the world to study how people take selfies. And they used a mix of theoretic, artistic, and quantitative methods here in their analysis. And, you know, every aspect of the selfie has been sliced and diced to find trends in everything from the tilt of the head, the smile frequency by city, the age group, the gender. And the data is presented in this really informative, interactive, engaging way. So I'm going to click through and show it to you. Now, hopefully the screen's going to switch, and hopefully it will switch with me. So I'm sure Raina will let me know if that doesn't happen in a second. Okay, I hope it has switched over.
You're on the browser, yeah.
Yep, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is the selfie exploratory. I think I'm saying that word correct. And I highly recommend everyone go in here and have a little bit of a play around just to kind of see that. There's some really interesting essays that have been written out as part of that as well, which is, I guess, someone trying to tell the story of the selfie data that's kind of coming through here too. So just want to show you some of the very impressive work that this organization has done in how they've first analyzed the data and then visualized it. So if we look maybe at selfies that are taken with the mouth open, and then let's look at people who are happy, because Raina, you and I are always happy. So we will adjust that. And then you can see here, maybe people who more tilt their head this way, and it's crunched it down in this format down to here, but we can widen this back out again. And maybe we can also see everyone in New York City whose selfie was selected, tilting their head slightly to one side with their mouth open, looking happy. I think that's, you know, a really nice, interactive, very, you know, unique, very unique way through the way they've done the filters here. You mentioned about filter adoption earlier, Raina, and how sometimes it's just not used. I think the way that Selfie City has done it by actually layering out a very impressive kind of set of interactive elements here, I really love it. And I think it's very engaging for something that takes a significant, you know, subset of data behind it as well.
That's fascinating.
Yes. Okay. I am going to come back now to the presentation. All right. So the next one I want to show you is one that is taking a very large amount of scientific data and scientific evidence to look at which are the tangible health benefits of certain type of foods. And in this particular visualization, there's a lot of scientific studies, review, and meta-analysis that essentially is driving, identifying which foods actually have a demonstrable effect on medical conditions or in health. And it's a lot of complex scientific data that's visualized to be easily digestible. And the thing that I love about this, Raina, you mentioned earlier about being honest with your data, right? Being transparent with your data. With each of these data visualizations, these data circles, you can actually drill down and see what was the underlying medical evidence that said this particular food actually did have super effects on health or not. So again, I'm just going to flick over to this. Okay.
It's on.
Excellent. Thank you. So you can see a really nice, you know, almost like word cloud to the max of foods that were strong in terms of their evidence versus, you know, promising versus inconclusive versus slight. So for anyone who's also interested in superfood health, I highly recommend you check this out. I love my dark chocolate. So I'm going to click on the chocolate here, and it will take me straight through to the underlying data, which here was a very big piece of research by Cochrane around it, which they've then, you know, interpreted into that very strong visual. So I really love this because they're being very open, very transparent about the underlying data behind the visualization and what that story is the visualization is telling. Okay, and then the final one I want to finish off on is a bit of a fun one. This is probably one of my personal favorite visualizations that I've come across. I'm sure there's some great ones in the media intelligence space as well, but this is my personal favorite one. And it is a journey through every Billboard top 50 hit to find music's greatest era. Now, I know there's always a lot of debate. There certainly is, you know, at my end of the world around, okay, which is the biggest era, best era in music, you know, which are the top songs, that kind of thing. And this really helps a user kind of understand that, and I guess have an answer for those debates that you might have over a glass of wine, because the data, you know, doesn't lie really here. This is put together by The Pudding, which is another absolutely fantastic platform. The kind of visual essays that they put together using data underlying, absolutely inspirational. So, you know, I've just chosen one here. And I think what makes this graphic so cool, in my opinion, is that the user, the audience, the one hearing the story, they can hear a small extract of each song playing as it goes by. So again, quite interactive, and I will play, and hopefully you will hear my music.
It's on.
I pull out black stop. I'm like, damn, how these niggas got that track? Used to be my man. How you gonna plot on my wife? Do you think he snake me because he hate me, or he got it?
I'm just going to change the year here now. Let's move forward a bit to maybe 2004.
It like it's hard, park it like it's hard, park it like it's hard.
I didn't mean to choose that one deliberately. It just happened. Drop it like it's hot. Excellent. That's a great segue into here as well. So I really love that one because, like I said, I think it's very fun, but it's also taking such a wealth of data and presenting it, like I said, in a very unique way. And it's got this overlay of the audio aspect as well. So I just wanted to share those three with you as three bits of data visualization that certainly inspire me beyond the industry, and I think you know, encourage me and my team to look at how you can always kind of push the envelope with what we're doing in terms of the visuals and the storytelling that we're doing. But I think we are probably ready to getting close to our kind of key points. So Raina, I'll pass back to you here.
Yeah, and before we do, I think it would be probably a good idea if we could share some of those links and examples to our FIBEP community with the help of the secretariat after this webinar. If there's an opportunity to do that, I think we should probably do it.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
But in terms of wrapping up, and we've probably mentioned some of those basic principles in the past, it's important to distill some of the key learnings and takeaways. A lot of the times in media intelligence, we create products for communication teams, but I think increasingly, and it is in everyone's interest, there are more users that are being added to the value chain. And I think being cognizant of those different users, certainly the C-suite and what they as users would typically expect. Clearly, the communications team is happy to read all the detail, be informed on a daily basis. The C-suite doesn't have that time or ability to follow in depth the information. So having the ability to create those different outputs and deliverables with the user in mind, both in terms of the breadth of the data, the frequency with which you deliver it, the format, and how much interactivity or a more static report they will need, are all important considerations. So maybe it's fair to say, think about the stakeholders, lay them out together with your contact, with the main buyer of the service. And I think we should pay attention to all of those different users that our services are helping to make decisions. I think last but not least, we spoke about the kind of value of format and aesthetics, and maybe that's something that would take us to the last slide, which is our quick wins or quick tips that Amrita and I have pulled out. We all think in threes, so we've decided to pull out three. There's hopefully more than three takeaways, but the three takeaways we wanted to emphasize are: number one is that data visualization and presentation and communication should have impact, but it should also be a pleasurable experience. It should be a pleasurable, wonderful experience. Aesthetics isn't everything, but is definitely something that enhances and improves the speed of understanding and appreciation of what you're trying to present. I think impact, and that's something that we spoke about a lot as well. Substance and impact and meaning are essential. And one of the reasons why it's so important to go back to the original objectives all the time and talk to your audience and revise or review everything that you've done on a regular basis is so important. It needs to create the impact, and it needs to deliver on the objectives that you've set out at the start. And it's okay if those objectives change, but create your idea, Amrita, around the QBR, whereby you encourage your users, you encourage your customers to give you ideas and think about the format and what is being delivered, is a really good business practice that's worth considering. And I think experimentation, something that you probably, Amrita, spoke about as well. Try different tools, try different applications. All those examples outside the industry, I love those. It's probably fair to say some of them are much more intricate and complex to deliver. You can't do this on a monthly basis, but the learning from them, and I think understanding those different applications, and a lot of those are free of charge, so free to use, are good learning for all of us. What would you say about these three?
Yeah, I think that you talked about the aesthetic layer. Data visualization needs to be pleasurable. I mean, I just think that's undeniable. And aesthetics, they do matter. They matter a lot to the C-suite, to your point on the earlier slide. They really do. From my experience, the C-suite does care about how things look. So we should be mindful about that. We should always have an eye on the aesthetics and making sure that there's a positive feeling when that visualization is being consumed. In my story I was telling earlier about the pharmaceutical example of the conversation I heard yesterday. Guess what? It was the boss who decided which visualization option they would take. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's the right thing or the wrong thing. I'm saying that is a common situation that we all come across, So that really talks about then the second thing that we've got here is the takeaway, which is, the impact and powerful storytelling. And I think in that situation, if you're going to convince the C-suite that actually that's not the right visualization, and then you've got to be able to tell a very good story with your other option. And absolutely, I love the idea of experimenting. Encourage your teams to experiment, give them an opportunity and give them some freedom to do so as well. Get their hands dirty with some free trials on some of these very cool visualization softwares out there, so that there's a culture of a bit of R&D happening in parallel through that experimentation that they're doing, even if it doesn't end up being client-facing at all, but it still gives you, a wealth of knowledge about how to visualize data and tell a story in a different way.
Exactly. And I think we all have stuff we can learn from looking at others, what others have done well and maybe not so well. So yeah, it's really exciting to look at what I always I always look forward to seeing case studies and watching presentations of peers and other companies in our industry to see how they're doing and what they've done. I think obviously with generative AI and that becoming more popular in terms of day-to-day use, there will be probably interesting examples to see in terms of the speed of delivery of data insights, and how we can probably utilize that. It's a question of us, keeping an eye on what everyone has done. I look forward to all the global summits in the industry coming up this year, as well as other conferences, including the kind of spring events around that FIBEP organizes. So it will be all very interesting to see what everyone has done in those areas. I know we have a few minutes for Q&A. I can see there are a couple of questions in the Q&A section already. Maybe we can pick those up, and see if anything else comes up. There's a question from Hussein, who is asking about distilling entities and what ways are there to distill entities such as places, companies, people, into a media evaluation, I guess, media intelligence environment. I guess if I can pick up, clearly AI is a great way, automation, it doesn't need to be AI, but there are automated ways of pulling those different entities. Equally, human curation and enhancement is always something that we kind of resort to if the entities are not very straightforward to pull out, or what we want to actually pull out is not entities, it's something like key messages or strategic pillars or things that are much more difficult. Hopefully they will become a bit easier to do, aided by latest technology, but a lot of what is done in those particular areas is still very much relies on human expertise. So yeah, the other question that we have here is, I think picks on an example from the tech Power BI dashboard that I shared. And the question is, what's the difference between balanced and neutral sentiment? I guess it's a specific of that particular report. The honest answer is that balanced includes both a positive and a negative view, whilst neutral is neutral in tone. But this is very specific to this particular report or client, and so you can have different interpretations. It kind of goes back to what the client wants, and we typically, I don't know about your experience, Amrita, but we typically ask to implement different scales around some of the more standard attributes in the industry, such as sentiment and prominence, to accommodate what the customer wants. And the definition of what, even the definition of what positive and negative is something that very much is driven by the customer's definition.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to touch on that, we use balanced and we use neutral as well, and we've got our methodology there that we use, behind that to make that distinction. And we've spent a lot of work ourselves, the last couple of years, working with customers around sentiment as well. So, I think it's interesting to look at, and probably maybe a topic for another webinar in the spirit of time. But yeah, we do have a methodology at Medianet around that too as well.
Brilliant. I think we've covered all the questions. We have a thank you note from Konstantinos Stavropoulou, which is really nice to hear. Thanks for listening and watching. It's probably the right time to thank everyone for attending. We are very punctual as well, which is always good, I'm sure, for everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Amrita, for staying up and showing up as you always do, and working with us on this. It's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have a discussion with someone who you feel close to, and I know we share a lot of experiences, both in business and personal, so it's always good to have you around.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to talk to you as well. You are a wealth of knowledge as always, and every conversation I have with you, I learn something as well, which is, I think rare sometimes. It's really lovely to be surrounded by people that, you can learn from and you can be inspired from too. So thank you so much for that. Hope to see a lot of our feedback friends and family on webinars in the future as audience, and myself watching some of you in some of the upcoming events, and for those of you that are attending the copyright summit, I'm very jealous. I wish I could have been there with you. Yes.
Thank you, Amrita, and thank you to Feedback for organizing this and hosting it with us. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.